Hello, welcome to this installment of the Toy Storage Nation series, TSN Conversations. This series is based on questions we most often get at Toy Storage Nation. Today's topic is 2024 market outlook and why Class A and RV and boat storage makes sense. Today's participants are Barry Sherman, partner and principal of S3 Partners, Neil Dyer, Director of Acquisitions and Development in Madison Capital Group, and Tyson Huebner, Director of Research at Yardi Matrix. I also want to mention that both Barry and Neil are Toy Storage Nation Advisory Board members. And Tyson, thank you for the fantastic market updates you do at the Toy Storage Nation workshops. Thank you
Absolutely.
all. Thank you all three for being here. Before we begin, I was hoping you could each introduce yourselves and give us a brief background. Barry, can we go ahead and start with you?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Barry Sherman, founder, principal of S3 Partners. We're a full service consulting team that services the boat and RV market, as well as has on the self-storage asset class. We're about 3 decades into what we do. We help take projects from early diligence to onboarding management companies at the end with handling entitlements, design, with a national footprint. So pleasure and pleased to be here today. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Barry. Neil, can we go to you next?
Yeah, absolutely. Neil Dyer, Director of Acquisitions and Development of Madison Capital Group. Madison Capital Group, we are a private real estate development and investment company. We have multiple platforms in the multifamily side, self-storage, and I lead our newly created boat and RV storage platform called Bluegate. We own 7 assets throughout the country and currently developing 6 others throughout the Southeast region. Bluegate is our boat RV business.
Thank you, Neil. And Tyson?
Hi, I'm Tyson Huebner. I am Director of Research at Yardi Matrix. We are a property database platform offering subscriptions, and we cover a variety of property sectors. I focus on self-storage, which includes RV and boat storage, and student housing. And I've been here for about a year. We're still working on upgrading our RV and boat storage data, but we have a lot of interesting insights, and hopefully we can share some of those with you guys today.
Thank you, Tyson. So let's go ahead and get into our topic of today. And Tyson, I purposely I added a little bit to it because really this is a part 2 of why Class A RV and boat storage makes sense. But really, I also wanted to give a bit of a 2024 market update. That being said, I guess we'll go ahead and start with you, Tyson, and then I'd like to hear from all of you as far as what your viewpoint is. And we could probably spend the entire hour on this one question. What is your view of the current RV and boat storage market? And what is your view for this market over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think that there has been, obviously there's been a surge in demand, a lot of it coming from COVID the past few years. And from what we've noticed from our data is there hasn't been a corresponding increase in Class A construction. Still, a lot of the properties that we're tracking are kind of Class B and C. They offer no amenities. Maybe they don't offer covered or enclosed parking. And so I think there's still a really great opportunity to offer those services and those types of units to customers. It's from the more that I've learned about it, the more that I've been interested. A lot of parking is still kind of offered at traditional self-storage properties, but I know from working at an investment firm that bought and sold a lot of self-storage properties that parking usually isn't their first priority, and they're not as focused on it. So I think now is kind of a great time to get into the sector and offer a product that offers a lot of the services and flexibility that are in demand from today's RV and boat storage customers.
Thanks, Tyson. You brought up a really great point, Class A. And I know on each of our installments, I kind of go back through the definition. For Toy Storage Nation, we really have put a pillar in the ground. We advocate for Class A boat and RV storage, and it really is 4 simple things. It needs to be gated, it needs to be fenced, it needs to be paved, and it needs to be covered in some manner, whether that's enclosed or canopy. And really, it's pretty simple to think about. These are very expensive toys, boats, RVs, sprinter vans that folks are spending a lot of money on, and they want them protected and secured. And then on top of that, they're willing to pay for the amenities and conveniences they're going to get in a Class A facility. So that's really where there is a lot of opportunity. And we'll talk a little bit more later about opportunity of taking some of these BC classes and taking them to A's, and that's happening in the market as well. So thank you for bringing up Class A from the get-go, so we can kind of all be on the same playing field for whoever's watching.
Yeah, and I'll note that our current definition of Class A is a little bit different than yours, but we're revising it. I think that we're being a little bit too strict about Class A, and we're only tracking a few hundred that kind of meet our definition. But I agree with you that having some covered and paved and gated are definitely the most important aspects of a property.
Thank you. Barry, if you don't mind, let's go to you. What is your current, thought on what's happening in the RV boat market? The opportunities that's out there, not only now, but, coming in the future.
Sure. I echo a lot of the items that Tyson just brought up. I think we're seeing a couple different trends. We had certainly the pent-up demand coming out of COVID. We all went recreational. There's still backlogs in recreational vehicles that are out there today. They're going to be deployed. But I'm also seeing that some of the trends that we're doing and doing as developers are starting to push the industry and people with these assets that have invested, life savings into them to say, we want to store them in places that seem safer, that are covered, that have amenities that we want. I think of Americans, we saw that, if I may, in parallel with storage 20 years ago. We got out of the single story drive ups in the industrial parks to now we're on Main and Main with 3-story climate control, music's in the hallways. So we're going to see those trends in the designs. And I think as Americans, we're going to be moving into that direction once these are put in place. I think the conversion opportunities are there. And we'll speak to that more, I'm sure, because we're going to find that's where uses are allowed today. So how do we take these where we've already got a use in place, where there's already revenue in place, and we can upgrade them accordingly? So there's my quick answer.
Thank you. And Barry, I know this is going to be very off the cuff, and tell me if you're not comfortable answering it. But, given the pent-up demand, what would you estimate, how many years, given what's currently happening and kind of what you see coming in the market, how many years will it take to kind of start to meet that demand that's out there for boat and RV storage?
Well, I think probably the question is based on the current backlog, where we might stabilize in an industry might be the question.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're probably within the next 3, maybe 4 years of finding that, but I think we're going to have a change that parallels that. Because if we just build facilities to fill the demand, it's one thing, but I think there's going to be a shift in where we want to put our assets. So all the Class Cs are going to start be fading out, and we're going to be moving towards a new product type. So there's a diversity in how one might look at that question there, Amy.
Makes sense. Thanks, Barry. Neil, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, that's why we're here today. There's a lot of tremendous momentum behind the boat and RV storage sector. And I would say one of the biggest things that we've seen, and I'm a testament of this, there's actually investment, development, and storage professionals specializing in boat and RV storage. I'm one of those folks as well. That's what I live, eat, and breathe. So that's just a testament of where this space has become. I mean, boat and RV storage typically self-storage is sleepy, unknown relative, and now it's becoming a standalone, self-sufficient industry. And the Class A space is really what's driving a lot of this growth around. So obviously, like we've all discussed, it's a great time to be in boat and RV storage. There's a lot of changes that are occurring, trends that we're discovering, and we're figuring out what works and doesn't work right now. So it's kind of an exploratory phase, and it's an opportunity for professionals and folks interested in this space to be a part of the changing of the guard with boat and RV storage from self-storage is sleepy relative to a standalone Class A type of experience.
It's become the cool kid.
It is, exactly. Finally rising to the top.
And you know what's been phenomenal is seeing folks who maybe had come from, who still do traditional storage and provide services development and whatnot, and that really saw the need for Class A boat and RV storage coming ahead of time, and kind of shifted some of what they do there. There's a lot of help that folks such as yourselves are giving folks that are getting into this industry, because it really is in its infancy. And it's great to have someone like you who's been there, done that, maybe had to go through the hurdles, had to learn some things with the cities and whatnot, that they can now take the knowledge that you have if they're working with you and shorten those periods of time, or not, maybe not have to go through something. It's great to have folks that can help folks along the way in the journey, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely, and it's just fun because we right now and what the great thing that everybody's doing being a part of Toy Storage Nation, we're finally able and we're starting to define the spec of what Class A boat and RV storage. I mean, typically each part of the country, each region, each state has had its own weird, funky definition of what Class A boat and RV storage. It goes back to self-storage. Everybody knows the institutional spec. And we're in that process of defining this institutional spec and bringing facilities of that quality that will attract that type of institutional investor into the space, which I think is tremendous.
Thank you for that. And you parlay right into the next thing I was going to talk about and ask you three. For folks that are listening that have traditional storage experience, and believe me, we understand that a great deal of folks that are getting into boat and RV Class A storage haven't had any traditional storage experience. There are folks that are coming over from traditional storage, but we get them from across the board. And not only that, not all of them have prior development experience. They're coming from other industries that may have been employee intensive, sold businesses that wanted a little bit, and we'll talk about that. I don't want to say this is a simple business, but they didn't want to have to deal with as many employees. But even folks that are coming from development areas understand that this is a different market and a different niche. They may have done multifamily, commercial, or whatever, and get the need that they need to have assistance with this type of development. So I'll get off my rant there. But that being said, and again, I'm not bashing traditional storage. Traditional storage is an amazing market, amazing opportunity. But given that, what are some advantages for owning, operating Class A boat and RV storage over traditional storage? Does anyone want to grab that one, Barry?
I can jump in for a couple seconds here. So there's a few different points here of what the advantage is today. I'm going to say we're still in the pioneering mode of Class A product. It is the new cool thing on the block, and it's an absolute new amenity that I think we're going to grow. So getting into it today, kind of at the floor and being a part of the growth in it, I think is going to position someone nicely. Two, we're integrating ourselves with the jurisdictions differently, like we did with storage for a while. But today we can speak more of the amenities, because a lot of our facilities today, these Class Cs, are in outlying areas. Also, they're in back of industrial parks. They're areas out of town. We need a little bit more space than a traditional storage, and we want that. But we can emphasize today more so the community need of bringing people to these type of facilities in neighborhoods where they have more covenants and requirements that people can't park their rig or their boat or their camper at their homes. So they play right into that. Those are a start of it. So I'll pass it on and let someone else jump in there.
Yeah, and that is, I think, one of the fundamental strengths of boat and RV storage is, in most municipalities and residential communities, there's an actual need, and you must store your boat and RV or recreational asset at a facility. If you don't have a big barn, or you don't live out in the countryside, so you do need, if you own one of these types of assets, to store it. Obviously, boat and RV, is what I live and breathe every day, and I believe in this part this business much more than self-storage, but no business is perfect. No business is easy. You have to obviously know what you're doing. You have to, know your market and know your customers and make sure that if you're building one of these facilities, it is a market that can handle what you're building. But the advantages are, like Barry mentioned, I think that's one of the key advantages, the need for boat and RV storage. And there's also, I would say, you're not storing compared to self-storage where you're typically just storing junk you can't fit in your house. This is an asset that your family uses and that they use constantly, and it's very family centric. So you're storing an asset that is of value instead of just junk. And so that's what we believe, it does create a stickier tenant than what we see in self-storage due to the fact of, you're storing something that you actually use and you actually cherish, which most of these, families do.
Right.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of what Neil said, I think from a research standpoint, since I am a researcher, I like that with RV and boat storage, there's a little bit more of a defined demand set, and demand is a little bit. There are some great sources out there that are tracking sales and registrations, and I think demand's a little bit better defined than it is for storage. Storage demand comes from so many different sources that it's a little bit harder to pinpoint. And then to echo what Barry said about getting in on the ground floor, RV and boat storage is a lot like self-storage 20, 30 years ago. It is a highly fragmented market. There aren't a lot of large owners and operators, and that kind of opens up the potential for somebody to come in and provide expertise across multiple markets, both development and management experience, and really make this into a business that resembles self-storage as it is today, which is highly kind of institutional ownership and a lot of public companies in the space.
Thank you, Tyson. Another thing I hear a lot about too is just the type of clients that you're not having to chase them for rent. They're folks that often can pay right up front. They've got the money to do it. They're wanting to protect their very expensive assets, but they're also happy. They're coming to get their RV and go on a vacation. It's just a different and also kind of a community feel. Are you seeing that out there as well?
It's a good point. I completely agree where, storage, is an amenity for all of us where we need. We either have death, displacement, divorce, all those things that really force us to sometimes use storage. This is more of a leisure activity. And so, yes, in combined with also that I'm going to bring forth the storage didn't have forever, that this asset and moving into a more Class A that can present is technology is here today. So when we're collecting rents or, we're modeling rates, we're going to bring technology into it that makes the business even just more viable. People are going to be able to ideally, you're going to be so that you're going to soon, and it's happening today, you're going to be able to load a camera view of your unit on site, feel comfortable that you can see it. You have protection with the gates, you have better lighting. All those things are going to make people feel more comfortable with likely even paying more than what they're doing today.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, and I think, Amy, you said it, you do have a very, I would say, well off, or higher demographic tenant, especially on the Class A side of the boat and RV storage. Those are the folks that own, boats and RVs, over $100,000, for each asset. I will say it's a little different when you kind of get down in the weeds and, you're looking at these gravel lots, places that store, old cars, I would say lower quality assets. It is, kind of a mixed bag in those types of, Class C type of facilities, C facilities and C locations. You do get a different, demographic base there. But the Class A side, and I think that's what we're all set out to be, is really where you see that stronger tenant that can pay the type of rent that you need to hit to build these Class A facilities.
Thank you, Neil. That's such a great point. And, Bob Hayworth, I was doing another installment with him, and that's something he brought up as far as, does it make sense if you've got a class C or B and moving, changing to class A? And sometimes there's concerns from owners going, well, I'll lose some of my clients if I'm upping the rent. And he goes, well, those C class, you probably didn't want them. They need to go where there's a parking lot or whatnot. But the class A is you're correct, going to bring in the type of clientele that you're not going to have issues with.
And they have plenty of other places to go store their RVs.
Totally.
There is. As soon as you start a remodel on a class C to class A, you just start watching the interest of people saying, well, are there going to be spots open over there? They see the paved areas, they see the canopy covered. It starts to change a mentality. Those are the people
That's right.
that
And a lot of these
using...
markets.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Neil,
I'm sorry, Barry, I apologize. But in a lot of these markets, the customers don't know better. You don't have class A options in, I would say, the vast majority of our country. So when these folks see class A, like Barry was mentioning, they start seeing pavement. I mean, pavement honestly is considered class A. I would say in the broad realm, not the definition that we're here defining today, but in the broad spectrum of boat and RV storage. A paved facility is a class B plus to A minus type of facility. But it's really, we're bringing this class A model in more cases than not to markets that are typically, I would say, underserved with the quality of boat and RV storage. So that's I would say is the the differentiator with building and expanding class A boat and RV storage.
Got it. Thank you. And I do want to say one thing because Jim Chiswell caught me on it. And one thing I don't say, and I should, is when we talk about paved, I should be saying paved or something like a true grid, because there are areas, certain areas where there's drainage issues. Would you guys agree? I know there are different thoughts on that.
Sure. There's different pavers that are used at times to account for permeability for stormwater detention that is utilized. But yeah, paving's a whole nother topic, what we like to do under canopy in regards to concrete slabs. So I'll pause.
As we go through these and I start to do more, I'm going to get nittier and grittier in the topics we're covering. So probably learn more about paving than I ever wanted to know at that point. So everything that we've talked about, obviously you are all three fans of Class A. For someone that might be thinking about getting into this market and they're worried, well, I'm not sure about how much money I'm going to be able to get to do, if they're just an independent coming in trying to do their first site. I'm not talking about the larger funds or whatnot, but they're thinking that the route to go is the cheaper route. I've heard, and tell me if I'm wrong, there are some benefits to coming in, not just from, and we've talked about competition. If you're going to do this, do Class A, because if you put up a less than a Class A, competition is going to come in and take your clients. But from a financing aspect, dealing with the cities, they love Class A. What are some other things that coming in from Class A from the get-go can help? Are there issues with the city? If you're saying you're a Class A, it can help. Have you heard about it helping with the banks and getting financing? Does anyone want to jump in there?
I would say one thing is to really know your market, wherever you're executing the strategy, know your market. Obviously, we're here talking about Class A. I mean, there are business models, Class B and C facilities do perform well. You can build businesses and build a portfolio off those types of properties. I have seen cases where some folks have overbuilt in markets that don't really, I would say, demand a Class A type of facility. So the best thing is know your market, know your customer, and know what your customer can pay. Because the last thing you want to do is overbuild in a market where you don't have demand. I mean, that is not a recipe for success. So that was just one caveat I wanted to throw in there. But I think, again, it goes back to what your market demands. I think Class A, obviously, you want to make sure you're in an affluent, area that can, that where your customers can pay the rents. That's the biggest thing. You have to be able to get the rents that help you rationalize the investment that you are going to make.
And location is probably important too, you know, being on the way to recreational amenities and the places that people want to go is important too. I've heard from a lot of different owners and developers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, there's about 4 things that we start looking at on any facility, and how to make a Class A work. We're gonna have to have a land basis that makes sense from a size standpoint. I'm not gonna get a 2-acre or 3-acre land basis to work for boat and RV. There's minimums there. We're gonna look at the cost of the land. Then we're gonna look at the product we're putting on there. Today, you know, personally, we believe that you know, you can have a mixture based on where you're sitting in the states. If you're in the Sunbelt states, you could simply be nearly 100% canopy, where we see the largest ROIs. But you get into some northern regions where people want to be indoor and even heated, you know, that brings a different product type in that you've got to reflect on it. Jurisdictions are going to like on how we bring landscaping, perimeter fencing, signage to that regards. We also are a believer that although it is 100, you know, Class A boat and RV site, we believe there should be some need of type storage on there potentially. When you look at your performance and you bring in some level of storage, because when you're renting, you're storing your boat or RV, you likely also have storage elsewhere. We believe we're going to capture a certain amount of people that say, I only want to go to one location. I'm going to park my asset here and I want to have some storage here. And then lastly, we're going to try to get some sustainable piece onto our projects. That's going to help us from a debt standpoint. So it could be solar, it could be a wind turbine, it could be something that's going to help us qualify for some type of different debt source that's going to help the bottom line also.
Barry, does it also help with approvals?
Certainly. How often you walk into the jurisdiction, I'm going to be green and sustainable and well landscaped and signage. Yeah, the conversations at the community meetings go much easier, Tyson.
100%.
Thank you for adding in the windmill part. I've heard solar a lot, and that has helped with the cities quite a bit, in addition to the revenue in certain states you can bring in. But that's awesome. I'll have to ask you more about that.
Sure.
With what we've been talking about, what's your thought with regards to phasing projects? Whether it's, you know, making a change from a Class BC to an A, or just development overall. Are you a fan of phasing? If you want to have a larger site, and the numbers have been done, and I kind of want to go back to what I should have said in the beginning. And thank you, Neil, for covering what this all comes down to. Can you justify the rents you're looking for, right? And that always comes back to feasibility studies. I get so many questions from folks that'll call me. They're talking about a particular piece of land somewhere in, goodness, Mississippi, right? And they're trying to tell me where it is and what unit mix and this and that. And I have to constantly give them the same answer. You need to speak to a feasibility person. They're going to make sure the area works. They also will look at your site too and talk about the unit mix and what's going to work there. So it always comes back to that. But that being said, I guess I'm going to add another question in on there. What's the minimum size if someone's looking for land and they you know, are working with feasibility person, making sure it makes sense? What's the minimum size piece of land that will work for something like this? And can you phase it over time? Can you start and then build on over time?
Neil, you want to jump in first?
Sure. So for me, you know, it was a little bit of a blessing to have a little bit of a self-storage background prior to boat and RV storage. Reason for that was we understood the, you know, the meaning of what I mentioned earlier, institutional spec. You want to build a property, you know, I'll say a few things before I jump into this. You're going to have, you know, payroll, you're going to have taxes, insurance, utilities. The larger your facility, the less burden that those expenses, you know, those expenses are kind of fixed expenses. So if you have a larger facility, you can spread those expenses, you know, over the property. Meaning, you know, you have a employee making $50,000 annually to run your facility, be a manager. If you have 50 units, you still pay that person $50,000, or if you have 500 units, you're still paying that person $50,000. So building to scale, I would say, is a very important thing. For me, what I'm looking for when I develop a boat and RV storage property, I want to get at least 200-ish spaces on the property. I think optimal is in that 250 to 300 spaces. That's approximately rental square footage, about 130,000 rentable square feet to about 150-ish thousand rentable square feet. I believe that's where you get the most efficiency running a boat and RV storage facility. And so what that equals to on the land side, that's about 7 to, I would say, 10 acres for what you need to be targeting to, to look for when you develop this boat and RV. Obviously, you can find niches, you can find markets, with really high barriers to entry. I'm not going to say you're not going to be successful on a smaller piece, but if you can hit that, 7 to 10 acres, that's kind of a good sweet spot to be in.
Tyson, I don't know if you have anything to add. I'm going to agree with Neil there on that size. And then one's got to be real conscious as they're coming in. I'll get a lot of people walking in the door saying, "Hey, I've got a great 7 acres," and by the time we've looked at the slope across there, the access,
Yes.
we're down to about 4 buildable acres.
Yes.
So, I think that 7-acre mark is a great starting point. You can tend to get some smaller sites to work, but the rates have to be much higher. You're going to be in closer to an MSA there, larger rates. That land basis is going to play into it. So I concur with what Neil was saying there.
Yeah, I would say keywords usable acres. And if there's some municipalities with, when you're developing boat and RV storage, you've got to really look at, your lot setbacks, how much of the site you can actually develop blacktop on. Some places have I would say, a less stringent requirement where you could find a 5-acre site and you can cover that thing, you could really, really maximize that site, but you really want to try to cover with blacktop, about 5 acres.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neil.
At a
Tyson,
minimum.
did you have anything to add, or did they kind of cover it for you?
These guys are the experts, so I'm learning from them. Yeah, we're
They
just
are.
a data provider, but
Well, your reports are awesome, Tyson. So
And then Amy, I never answered your question about phasing. Phasing, creates some opportunity if you buy a land site that is maybe larger than the 10 acres. You have a great potential to build, I would say, a number of units that you believe the market can handle, and then grow that over time as you lease up a property. So phasing is a great strategy if you have extra land. So, there are 2 mantras. Obviously, if you have a land site and you have a capital stack that can invest the dollars to do a larger land site, it goes back to what your market can bear. Obviously, it makes more sense if the market's ready for it and there's a lot of demand and you see that to go ahead and do the entire property all at once. It goes back to your personal business plan, though. It is okay to phase it, try it out. That is part of the problem with boat RV storage. We don't have a lot of data. We don't have a lot of points that we can. We don't have a lot of roadmaps, I would say, that we can use that will guarantee us success on a project. So there's been a lot of trial and error in this space. So I would, typically, if you're a first-time developer in the boat and RV storage space, I would err on the side of being conservative. Get to know your market, get to know what your tenants are looking for, lease that portion of the property up, and then build an expansion using the information that you gained to go ahead and execute that next phase of the project.
What are your thoughts? One suggestion someone had given me was, in the development phase, it would make sense to pave it all at once, but do the other things over time, so you're not disrupting the other areas of your site. What do you think about that, Neil? Or is that?
I mean, there's going to be disruption no matter what. So it again, it just depends on what you are, what you're willing to invest on that side of the coin. If you want to be more conservative with your capital, it's probably better just to keep the site, clean, untouched. Obviously, if you do pave the whole site, you have conviction behind the project. As soon as you lease up, your Class A covered, you can start parking some outdoor spaces over there. So that does bring you, that does give you the ability to deliver your expansion faster. Because we all know what the name of the game with development is. It's to build it as fast as you can and lease it up as fast as you can. So that does help you with speed. But like I said, if you're going to be a first-time developer, I would err on the side of caution if you have a very big property, and really just get to know what your market can handle, and then go from there.
Thank you. Neil, this is probably more for you, but I think everybody knows the market well enough. They probably have some ideas as well. But say someone wants to get into this market, they've heard about the advantages of Class A boat and RV storage and the opportunities that are going to be there for boat and RV storage. But they themselves don't want to go through the development process, right? They don't want to be a part of that, even though they can work with someone fabulous like yourselves and Barry that can kind of guide them through, but they don't want to do that. What types of investment opportunities are out there for folks who want to take advantage of what this market is doing, but they don't want to be a part of that day to day and deal with the development?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So a few answers. So my company and what we do all day, every day, we buy existing boat and RV storage, and we also develop them. So if you don't want to go through development, you could always buy a facility and obviously create a business plan for that property and either make upgrades or just operate it as is and let it be a nice cash flowing asset. On the development side, I think that's where more Class A comes into play, where you're bringing a Class A facility to a location. And that's really, what I believe is the differentiator in the boat and RV storage, and what separates, a project from the competition is being able to be that Class A option. If you're not wanting to go through the headaches that Barry and I go through, each and every day, and you want to get involved, it's great to invest with a group that you get to know, that you're comfortable with, that has a lot of experience in this space. We bring on investors, individual investors on some of our projects. So we raise money with investors. So there's an opportunity to partner with someone with experience, which it's always great to do your first deal with someone with experience, so you can understand the game plan and know how this business works, and then you can eventually do it yourself. So I would say, if you're not want to take over the headache, it's great to partner up with folks. Or if you don't want to go through the development, it's great to buy a property and then execute your business plan there.
Hey, Neil, quick question. How do RV and boat storage cap rates compare to traditional self-storage?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say there are a few caveats to this answer. So just general rule of thumb, boat and RV cap rates, obviously it's a little different today than it was, 12 months ago. Boat and RV storage cap rates, the way I view it, they're about 75 to 100 basis points higher than traditional self-storage. With boat and RV cap rates, you see a few different things that you do with self-storage due to the fact of where the boat and RV storage asset class is compared to self-storage. Since this is a highly fragmented asset class, typically there hasn't been really a rule of thumb best business practices. Really, what you saw with self-storage, with the emergence of the REITs bringing third-party management, that brought an institutionalized style management operations to self-storage. So typically self-storage facilities, are operating, I would say, we'll call it at optimal performance. Boat and RV storage, since it is highly fragmented, the majority of facilities are not operating at optimal performance. So there are, I would say, situations where you could be buying a 4 cap, but it's more of where you can stabilize that cap rate once you execute your business strategy. But rule of thumb, again, we're seeing cap rates right now for boat and RV storage. Things have ticked up a little bit, since 12 months ago. We're seeing them, in Class A, obviously is the driver. Class A, we're seeing in kind of the high fives. The rest of the market's kind of in the mid to low sixes on cap rates.
And how long do you think before you do see like a third party manager emerge for
It's
RV
happening
boaters?
today.
Yeah,
It's
like you said, it's
here.
happening today. I would say groups are starting to become, get wise with boat and RV storage. It's still going to take time. The REITs are really what really, I would say, drove the competition and the third party management on self storage. So we need, multiple groups to get involved on a third party side of boat and RV. And that goes back to really, I would say, the hardest part of boat and RV storage is the operations, given that there really aren't third party groups out there to give you the playbook of how to operate. So you really have to, that's kind of the blessing and curse of having self-storage experience. The blessing is you kind of know some of the fundamentals about boat and RV storage using a self-storage lens. The curse is it's obviously a different customer, different demand drivers, different needs, different ways facilities are run. So, there are new things you've got to learn. But, I would say you really just got to understand on how you want your business to operate and, go from there. But the operation side, I think, is really what it is causing the boat and RV storage space to be in that early side of growth. Once more third-party management gets into the space, we're going to really see an acceleration. And to what everybody's pointed at, during this conversation, that's why it's great to get in on the early side of this. That's where, the rewards lie, is getting in early. And as that, management comes into this space, that's where you're going to see more passive investors starting to gain traction in the boat and RV storage space. So for now, it's an operating business. And so that's what the mindset you really need to take when you're jumping into the space, is that it's a hands-on operating business. And so that's my view of it.
Thank you. And Tyson, if you're wanting to connect with any third party, management companies, I'm happy to connect you if you have any questions, but
I'm curious.
Not a ton of them yet.
I'm curious, and I'm also curious if any, traditional self-storage operators that have big third-party management businesses are looking to get into this space, because there is some overlap. They already manage probably a lot of parking.
They're in there today.
Yeah.
The REITs have been working on it for quite some time, trying to figure out how to get their operational footprint in this side of it, because there's a lot of differences. Just our lien laws in each state is different than how we handle storage. So there's a big training curve, policy curve, but there are some operators already crossing over doing both today, Tyson.
That's great.
Neil, you probably didn't think I was going to ask you a potential operations question, but given that, Bluegate has multiple sites, and I have been talking to Mike Shorts, and, just what they've learned by having, 60 sites now, and a lot of what's helped them is automation, because they can see what's happening and they can learn what's happening in one site. And I asked them, can you kind of take that cut, copy, paste, repeat method? And again, every location is different, but there's certain things they've learned by having multiple locations that now can be implemented across the board. With you having multiple sites, is there anything you've kind of learned from an operations standpoint that kind of has made sense and you've been able to implement them in multiple sites?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I would say, where we have a little bit of a strategic advantage, we have a self-storage platform called Go Store It, and we have over 100, facilities throughout the country. So we are very fortunate where we can enter new markets and already have, operations staff, in those locations. It's great, obviously, for training employees, making sure, we bring the right manager on staff for the boat and RV side. Like Barry said earlier, technology has been a big push for our company this year on our boat and RV side, especially through the rate management software and booking software, call centers and whatnot, and giving, our customers accessibility, not just with a gate code number, you could use your phone, you can call the call center, we want to be able to touch our customers, obviously with a person, but, we want them to be able to access and get help, in many different ways. But I would say the biggest, the great thing about boat and RV storage compared to self-storage, you don't have as much daytime traffic with boat and RV as you do with self-storage. So having multiple facilities in a location can really help you with your staffing. And also what I mentioned earlier, your payroll for a storage facility, pretty much no matter what the size of the full-time payroll, full-time employee will be the same. And so if you can spread that employee over multiple facilities, that will really help your NOI for your project. So I think that's the biggest advantage. And that's where, the REITs really excel with third-party management on self-storage, was having scale in these markets. And obviously what comes with that as well, you have better data, you have better transparency in these locations. And so you already, you're already kind of, I would say, ahead of the curve when you're looking at these locations, obviously with, also having, boots on the ground, prior to entering a new market.
Thank you. Barry, this leads me to a question. Are you seeing more, funds, individuals, whatnot, coming to you, wanting to start with you with multiple sites? They've got their plan, and it's become bigger than it.
Yeah, great question. In the last 36 months, and I've been trying to track that data, likely about half of the phone calls we get are still individuals looking to do one-offs at the moment. Okay. But that has decreased, and we probably have at least half of our phone calls that are groups that are looking to build a portfolio. They're launching a national brokerage search in various areas. They are looking at either new ground up greenfield sites or the acquisition of an existing Class C for conversion. So we are seeing that grow on both sides. Overall, just more volume.
Thank you for that. Tyson?
Yeah, and I'll reiterate, there is I would say, a higher level of capital finally looking into the space than there was in the last handful of years.
Yep.
Boat RV storage, it's on radars of big investment companies. I would say part of the challenges, though, again, we're still in the infancy. Data and going back to management are probably the biggest challenges that will need to, I would say, continue to evolve for the bigger capital to continue to get into this space. And as more groups start building portfolios and as more groups start developing Class A facilities, I mean, that's what, the higher level of capital wants. They want bigger deals. They want Class A facilities. They write larger checks. So they want facilities that can, where that are over $10 million plus. They want those larger facilities, and that's where this Class A self-storage comes, or Class A boat and RV storage comes into play. So, but there are new groups wanting to get into this space, each and every day. But I would say it's still early on, and there's still a great opportunity for folks, to do a facility themselves and continue, buying or building one-offs.
Thank you. And I'm cognizant of time, Barry. I have one last question, and this is probably directed at Tyson, because we've been talking a lot about data and it being in its infancy, and the market's in its infancy, so it makes sense. But given that you're the data person, and again, when we're talking data, we're talking about a number of pieces of data all over, but with regards to what Yardi tracks, where do you see it kind of going? Do you see things evolving over the next couple of years? And probably just because you're going to have more to track. Oh.
Sorry. So we kind of got into RV and boat storage because we were already tracking self-storage, and a lot of those properties include parking. So we're already tracking rents at, thousands of self-storage properties for parking spaces. It just seemed a logical next step, but we are learning there's a lot of nuances. So, we're looking into, and we're going to start separating rents out. We currently show like climate controlled and, non-climate controlled, which is mostly uncovered, but we're going to split them out by covered, uncovered, and enclosed, which is really the way, people look at RV and boat storage. Also, it's been kind of a struggle to track supply. In self-storage, people talk a lot about saturation. And when I say supply, I'm talking like net rentable square footage. But with storage, because there's buildings, and those buildings and their property records have a square footage, it's been a little bit harder for us to get square footage for uncovered or covered, canopied, I should say, and uncovered properties. And we did start estimating that. We just released that on our platform, which is great for RV and boat. And the next step is to apply that to traditional self-storage. So you'll be able to have a better sense of how much supply there is in a given market. And that'll help people choose where to develop, because you'll get to see where there are holes in supply and there could be unmet demand. And yeah, it's been a big learning process for us. And the more that I go to your guys' events, the more I learn about the sector and the more different things I want to start tracking. And fortunately at Yardi, we've been tracking self-storage for 7 or 8 years, and we can apply and use all those resources we have to track supply and rates and just apply those to RV and boat. It's just taken us a little time to kind of catch up with the nuances of the sector. But we're catching up fast. And I will say we're going to start releasing, we won't be doing monthly reports like we do for storage, but we're going to do kind of a national report twice a year to begin with, and hopefully quarterly next year. So that'll kind of provide more transparency. People will get a sense of what's going on with rents and new supply in the sector. And I think that will kind of, help everybody just understand more about what's going on.
Tyson, Barry here. I look forward to seeing that. I think your data is going to be a game changer on a variety of fronts. As I'll call it a bit of this still, we're still in a little old school in regards to some of our data collection. Love to get offline and talk about a couple things in regards, but I think you're going to be the star of the show at some point here in the near future.
100%.
Thank you. Yeah, when I started working on storage, there was really no good data source for self-storage, and I used to create all these massive databases on my own. And it's great now working at Yardi. We have hundreds of people that are working on pulling property records and tracking down ownership and tracking new supply on a consistent basis. So to have those resources at our fingertips, really the sky's the limit for what we're going to do with the data.
Thank you for that, Tyson. And I'm greedy. I can't wait till we can get our hands on that report.
Hopefully, hopefully the first one will be out by the ISS, because I know you guys are doing an event right after ISS, which I'm attending. So hopefully we'll have it out the first one out by then, and then we'll get feedback from you all about what you think is great about it, what you think needs some work, and it'll be a process.
I'm sure the advisory board would be very happy to look at it.
Yeah, and one thing I will say, we are very fortunate to have Toy Storage Nation and folks that are looking to invest and develop in this space. Toy Storage Nation is a great resource to have, because I would say, obviously I've said it before, the business of boat and RV storage is not easy. It can be very rewarding when you execute it right. I'd say for first timers, due diligence is very, very important. And the great thing about Toy Storage Nation, there's experts in every field that you need to know to execute this business. You have folks like Barry, Tyson, managers in this space, all your technology pieces as well, investment specialists, brokers. When you are getting ready to kick off your first boat and RV storage deal, use the resources through Toy Storage Nation. Make sure your business plan is something that you can execute in the market that you're in. Use brokers that can help make sure what you're building will be a profitable business once you're ready to sell. So it's all about make sure due diligence is very important, and use the resources at Toy Storage Nation. And it's a very friendly group, and folks are really willing to help, because what we want to do is see everyone succeed in this space as we grow out this industry.
Thank you for that, Neil. We are out of time, so what I'd like to do very quickly, and Barry, I'll have you go first because I know you probably have to get going. If you could just give your name again, your company, and your contact information. If someone gets to this video, not from our site, where we have your information, that they can reach out to you.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Again, Barry Sherman with S3 Partners. S3 dot partners. You can find us on the web. Phone number is 303-746-7013. Look forward to connecting and assisting where we can. Amy, thanks again. And I echo Neil's point. Thrilled to be on the advisory board of Toy Storage Nation. I think it's the pioneering front to what's going to be a great continued asset class.
Thank you,
I'm going to
Barry.
jump now. Thank you, everyone. Take care, Tyson, Neil.
Bye, Barry.
And thank you, Barry, very much. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
And Neil and Tyson, if I could just keep you for one or two more minutes, I'm going to make sure that everyone gets your contact information. So Neil, can you share your company as well?
Yep, Neil Dyer with Madison Capital Group and Blue Gate Boat and RV Storage. Anytime if you want to call, you can reach me on my cell, 615-456-2984. And my email is Neil, Neil, at MadisonCapGroup.com.
Thank you. And Tyson.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, I'm Tyson Huebner. I work with Yardi Matrix, and I put my email there in my name. I don't know if they'll be able to see that on the web, but also my cell is 773-415-4672, and would love to talk to people about our data and how it can be used to make the best decisions.
Thank you, Tyson. And I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Amy Bix. I'm president of Toy Storage Nation. We are a media education brand that advocates for Class A boat and RV storage. We have a website that has got a ton of content, case studies, articles, new information going up every day. As Neil has talked about, we do full day intensive workshops. We cover just about every topic you can think of, from feasibility, financing, construction, marketing, investing, security, you name it, every topic that you're going to need to know to be getting in this market. But on top of that, even more important than the presentations are the folks you're going to meet at these events. We purposely build in time for you to have time to ask these experts and speakers, such as we had today, questions that you have. There really isn't anything else out there where you get to meet these folks one-on-one, all in one location at the same time, and ask your particular questions. If you go to our website, toystoragenation.com, and go under the events tab, you will see the listing for the next events for 2024. Our next one happens to be coming up, if you're listening to this soon, April 5th. If you're listening to it after, there is a whole list for the remainder of the year and thereafter. We also do have a membership program where we will have a very extensive guide coming out in March. And so lots of different opportunities for you to get involved with Toy Storage Nation and meet experts such as this. We're very fortunate in this market, because it does need a lot of handholding, that there are individuals who are willing to help, give time, answer your questions. And it just goes to show, when we have folks such as Neil and Tyson and Barry giving their cell phone number to you, they're wanting to work with you and help you in this market. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you both for being here. I very much appreciate your time and
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Amy, for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.